have done so much for me, I cannot tell it all. If I had 10,000 tongues, it still wouldn't be enough. Chukuna won't be really. When you heal completely. Chukuma robi mo. Isi kendule we say. Hey, yeah. What shall I render to Jehovah? For he has done so very much for me. What shall I render to Jehovah? For he has done so very much for me.
எனக்கெல்லாம் செய்திரே நான் என்ன செலுத்துவேன் நன்றிகள் ஏற்றுக்கொள்ளும் ஆயிரம் நாவுகள் போதாதையா நன்றிகள் ஏற்றுக்கொள்ளும்
Tuhan yang menyembuhkan, kau sembuh sepenuhnya. Oh, terima kasih. Tuhan tahu hatiku, Tuhanku ajaib. Oh, ku terima kasih.
Que pourrais-je t'offrir, oh Jéhovah, toi qui as fait tant de merveilles pour moi.
以什么报答主耶和华？他所赐的一切厚恩。
Te agradeço, ó meu Senhor, te agradeço. Te agradezco, oh mi Señor, te agradezco.
He has done so very much for me.
Hi, I'm Maryland State Delegate Pam Queen, representing Legislative District 14, in which the Sandy Springs Slave Museum and Art Gallery resides. And I want to welcome you tonight to a very informative program, which is Emancipation Day, commemorating the end of the Triangle slave trade. So please stay tuned and you will learn a lot of history tonight. Thank you for joining us. Bye.
Welcome to the Sandy Springs Slave Museum's Emancipation Day celebration. I'm Troy Body, one of your hosts for tonight's celebration. My co-host for tonight is Natalie Williams. Tonight, we will not only be celebrating Emancipation Day here in Maryland, but also make connections to Africa, the Caribbean, and South America. I'd like for us to think about these connections using the imagery of a bridge. Bridges connect one landmass to another. Bridges also serve as a way in which we make cultural connections. So as we think about the past, let's start with looking at our current state. We're going to watch a short video. We want to think about the concept of emancipation, which means the facts or process of being set free from legal, social, or political restrictions, liberation. So let's think about this idea of liberation as we watch this next video clip.
George Floyd
repeatedly told the officers that he could not breathe after an officer knelt on his neck.
The family of George Floyd held a memorial in his memory.
My brother's gone, but the Floyd name still lives on.
George Floyd, you are gone but not forgotten. Because of you, we've come together.
This is for George Floyd.
It's all right to be angry, but we're going to take our anger and our indignation and turn it into energy.
George Floyd! George Floyd! Justice! Justice!
To march. To dance, to kneel, to be quiet. We're saying your name. We're saying their names. We're being loud.
Hands up! Don't shoot! Hands up! Don't shoot!
We're being brave. We're laughing. We're crying. getting engaged. We're getting married. We're changing the world.
We soldiers, man. Let's stop hurting each other and let's get it right, man. Today is the day we're gonna stand up for our community, man.
If we could do this, we could do more. We just gotta continue on pushing and don't give up.
He did what?
Daddy changed the world.
Daddy changed the world.
So as we think about bridges, African Americans are still fighting for liberation from laws and restrictions that are oppressive and sometimes deadly. This will be a theme that's going to run throughout tonight's events. That idea of bridges, that resilience of African and African American and Afro-Caribbean and Afro-Latino peoples throughout the world. So again, welcome to the Sandy Springs Slave Museum and African Art Gallery and our celebration of Emancipation Day here in Maryland.
Hello, my name is Aaliyah, and I have just recently become a volunteer and a docent for the Sandy Springs Slave Museum. Today, I'm going to be reading a poem by Seymour Productions called Too Black, and I hope you enjoy. They take my kindness for weakness. They take my silence for speechless. They consider my uniqueness strange. They call my language slang. They see my confidence as conceit. They see my mistakes as defeat. They consider my success accidental. They minimize my intelligence to potential. My questions mean I'm unaware. My advancement is somehow unfair. Any praise is preferential treatment. To voice concern is discontentment. If I stand up for myself, I'm too defensive. If I don't trust them, I'm too apprehensive. I'm deviant if I separate. I'm fake if I assimilate. My character is constantly under attack. Pride for my race makes me too black. That was the poem by Seymour Films, Too Black, and I hope you all enjoyed, and that will conclude my video. Have a nice day.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Spicer, Countywide Museum Manager with Montgomery Parks here in Maryland. Today we are celebrating a pivotal moment in Maryland history, and that is the abolition of slavery, which occurred in 1864. So as one of the slaveholding border states, Maryland's enslaved population were not liberated by President Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation earlier, but by an amendment to the state constitution on November the 1st, 1864 that abolished slavery. Now this occurred months before even the end to the Civil War. When asked why commemorating this event is so important, I'd say when we look at the history of Africans in America and their descendants, it is an exceptionally long history and one that's filled with incredible moments of ingenuity, of leadership, struggles, faith, creativity, terrific pain and joys, but most always perseverance. And so the study of African American history, especially moments such as these that occurred in Maryland, help to have us understand the legacy of slavery and the impact that it has on us today. So for decades now, parks, along with other historic agencies and cultural organizations, have been commemorating this emancipation the 1st of November each year. So we ask that you join in to the program today and hopefully enjoy and learn a little bit. Thank you.
So, how much do you know about slavery and Emancipation Day in Maryland? Good evening. I'm Natalie Williams, and I am so glad you joined us here tonight in celebrating Emancipation Day. Here at the museum, we have been celebrating this holiday for the past 15 years and longer. I would like to share some information with you about slavery in Maryland. I would like to begin with a quote. A people without the knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. Marcus Garvey. This is a very powerful quote and reminds us that we must understand the past and know where we come from in order to know which direction we must go in the future. Africans were first brought here to these shores of Maryland in 1634, and they came through the different ports of St. Mary's in St. Mary's County, Baltimore, and also Annapolis. Enslaved Africans worked on tobacco farms. They harvested wheat. They worked on the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad and built the Chesapeake and Ohio Canal. They also worked in the cities, usually as house servants. You can see on this slide, you have two enslaved African Americans. The one on the left shows an 1861 house servant in Baltimore, Maryland. The picture on the right shows Martha Ann Patty Atavis with a young child, Alice Whitridge of Baltimore, Maryland. This is in 1863. Many Maryland enslaved African Americans lived on plantations, such as Woodlawn in Sandy Spring, Maryland. And we see a picture here of Woodlawn in 1880 and the picture of how it looks today. We also see pre-Civil War homes from the Germantown area of Maryland. And we also see a log cabin. This is a great representation of the many homes that enslaved and free African Americans lived in this area of Maryland. The Civil War helped move the need for emancipation in Maryland. So with the outbreak of the war in 1861, many slaveholders, Marylanders, had a hard time retaining their slaves. Many enslaved would leave their owners and find Union troops to work and help fortify the Union. And then in 1862, DC emancipated their enslaved. So this provided another opportunity for Maryland enslaved people to find freedom. In 1863, President Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, which freed the enslaved and the rebellious Confederate states. So border states, such as Maryland, this proclamation did not apply to those who were enslaved. So in Maryland, in November 1st, 1864, Maryland ratified a new constitution prohibiting slavery. The quote in Article 24 says this, that hereafter in this state, There shall be neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except punishment of crime, whereof the party shall have duly convicted, and all persons held to service or labor as slaves are hereby declared free. You can see in the next slide that you have pictures of Union troops. And there were more than 4,000 some free and enslaved men in Maryland that joined the Union. And this was a great, one of the pictures from the 2nd Chestnut Street in Philadelphia. And then also on our next slide, you will see a some freed African-American families that came to Baltimore in 1865. This is just a little bit of information that we definitely wanted to share with you, along with this last slide, which is a slide from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, which says, "God Save the Republic," and it's to commemorate the emancipation here in Maryland. Philadelphia was very excited that Maryland finally had issued a proclamation. We will now move on to some entertainment, and we will going to present to you the Adele African Drumming Dance Group. So feel free to get up and move as the music moves you.
So the door of no return was the last piece of earth Africans set foot on in the motherland before enduring the horrors of the Middle Passage and further being stripped of their humanity and bondage. Recently at the museum, we added a replica of the door of no return to the grounds of the Sandy Springs Slave Museum, an African art museum. And I'm going to share with you a short segment of our dedication program. So enjoy the presentation.
From about 1525 to 1866, 12.5 million Africans were taken from their homeland and forcibly transported across the Atlantic, a journey that approximately 2 million of them would not survive. By the turn of the 18th century, European merchants were building vessels capable of transporting hundreds of enslaved people per journey. These ships had extra portholes for ventilation, weapons mounted on deck in case of rebellion, and additional compartments added below deck to take on more human cargo. Before boarding the ships at African port cities, enslaved people were stripped of their clothing and remaining possessions and had their heads forcibly shaved. During boarding, which could take weeks or even months, enslaved people lived on the deck of the ship in a temporary wooden house constructed by the crew. The crew also installed netting around the deck of the ship, designed to catch those enslaved who might opt for death over forced servitude. Once moved below deck, enslaved people would find themselves stuffed into compartments with ceilings as low as 4.5 feet, where they would spend most of their voyage. They were segregated by gender and age. Adult men were kept separately and shackled in pairs. Women usually left unchained in their designated compartment, and children often free to move about the ship. There were no sanitary facilities of any kind. Enslaved people were forced to relieve themselves where they sat, creating hellish conditions when combined with the heat and lack of ventilation below deck. Disease was rampant. Dysentery, malaria, yellow fever, smallpox, measles, and influenza ravaged the enslaved and crew members alike. The enslaved people generally spent about 8 hours a day above deck, but were still separated by gender, with a barricado, a reinforced wall that could be used to protect crew members in case of a revolt. Enslaved people were also subject to forced exercise, which sometimes included dance and song for the entertainment of the crew. Enslaved captives deemed disobedient were tortured and beaten, usually whipped with the especially cruel cat o' nine tails, a tool designed to inflict maximum pain. Enslaved people who refused to eat their typical meal of rice and beans were forced to do so, sometimes with a speculum oris, a medieval tool used to force open a person's mouth. Women, while usually left unshackled, were raped and sexually abused by members of the crew, sometimes arriving in the New World, carrying the children of their attackers. But it was the women, using their minuscule freedoms, who would often coordinate mutinies against their captors. But these rebellions were rarely successful. The true extent of the horrors of the Middle Passage came to light in a 1783 court trial over the slave ship Zong. The Zong left present-day Ghana in August of 1781 with 442 enslaved on board. After a 2-month journey riddled with navigation errors, 62 enslaved people and 7 crew members had perished without reaching their destination. Disease was spreading throughout the ship, and fresh water was running dangerously low. Captain Luke Collingwood was afraid of the financial cost of more deaths. Enslaved people that died of disease were not covered by the ship's insurance, but the enslaved who drowned were. Collingwood ordered approximately 130 enslaved people thrown overboard. He claimed it was necessary to do so to halt the spread of disease. At the trial between the Zong's owners and their insurance company, the owners argued that because it was legal to kill sick animals for the health of a ship, it was legal to treat enslaved people the same. The court agreed with the ship's owners, but the trial itself exposed the horrors aboard the Zong, and its story was republished by British abolitionists with the name of the ship redacted, meant to show that this tragedy could happen on any ship transporting enslaved people across the Middle Passage. 24 years after the Zong trial, the international slave trade was outlawed in both Great Britain and the United States. It would take England an additional 26 years, and the U.S. another 58 years, plus a civil war, before the practice of slavery was officially abolished.
So again, the last footprint that Africans had were through the door of no return. The savagery of slavery left trails of trauma on both sides of the Atlantic, not to mention the millions who were unable to survive the long, horrendous trip across the oceans. Many who were left behind were considered unfit for sale. They were torn from their families and homes and lived as outcasts on the fringe of various towns and communities. Next slide. The stigma still lingers around the so-called taboo villages of families who were victims with offsprings of sexual assaults violated by colonial sailors and officers. Next slide. The legacy of slavery lingers on and crosses the bridge over the Atlantic to South America, Central America, and of course, North America. Emancipation Day, inasmuch as there is a legitimate case for reparations, is also an opportunity for healing, for looking forward, and to honoring our past so that we can move into our future. And so these are some examples of the slave castles, which is what Africans saw, the last thing they saw of their homeland before they entered the slave ships. Many of those who died, rest in peace. May those who return find their roots. May humanity never again perpetuate such injustice against humanity. We, the living, vow to uphold this. And in our new installation at the museum, this is on a placard. And again, remembering the past as we move into the future with our heads up and our shoulders back. And we continue to make a positive impact on the world around us. Next slide.
We now see on the screen a map of the world, and you see some dots that are moving. This is a time lapse of the different slave voyages that took place. It begins in the 1500s and ends in around late 1860s. And you can see different colors, and these different color dots represent the different countries that were the countries who were in the business of the slave business. So the green was Portugal and Brazil. The red was Great Britain, and you can see how it intensifies. Blue was the French. Yellow was Spain. The lighter blue was the United States, and the other two colors were the Netherlands and Denmark. And you can see how it increases, and it's moving from the western part of Africa, coming towards, as you see, Brazil, but also definitely the Caribbean, and coming to the mainland of North America. And it looks as though as Africa is weeping, all of these millions of Africans who are being transported across the ocean. And this is a part of the triangular slave trade, or the one leg of it, bringing the labor force to the areas of the so-called New World. And then this is where many people begin their lives, being taken from their home. So it's just a good representation for you to see how many voyages, millions of people, and you can see how it intensifies. It's pretty sobering to see. So now we're going to hear from one of our own from here in Sandy Spring, and her name is Kim C. Lee, and she is an author, and she has a quick message for us.
Hi, I'm Kim C. Lee, author of The Night Owl. I'm honored and overjoyed to participate in this Emancipation Day celebration event. I like to give a shout out to the Sandy Springs Slave Museum and African Art Gallery for their ongoing efforts to educate the community in surrounding areas on the heritage and accomplishments of Africans and African Americans. As not only a visitor of the museum, but also someone with family and friends that have been part of the Sandy Spring community for a long time, I can personally attest to the great experience the museum offers for learning and growing in truth. Keep up the great work, and thank you for being a guiding light to all of us.
So we are now going to share a little information about emancipation. We have Afro, Latino, Caribbean, and try to focus on a few things from those areas. The British Empire formally abolished in 1833, had the Slavery Abolish Act. But actually it wasn't until August 1st, 1834 that all enslaved were free. So right now we're going to hear from Ray, who will share some information about slavery in Brazil. And by the way, Brazil...
Before the arrival of Christopher Columbus, the Caribbean people had society composed of chiefdoms and ceremonial ball courts, fashioned religious objects, and engaged in trades and two-way flows of cultural influences. Many of them settled in the islands of Haiti, renamed Hispaniola, which we know today as the Republic of Haiti and the Dominican Republic. Archaeologists uncovered pre-Columbian gold work and ornaments, vessels, and sculptures from the Tainos communities in this region, including Panama, Colombia, and Costa Rica, showing further evidence of the complex system and technology that supported these societies. The influence of these indigenous people can be seen from Mexico to Venezuela. One of the earliest slave rebellions in Mexico was led by Gaspar Yanga, an African of the Maroon colony of slave in the highlands of Mexico, successfully in 1618 achieved an agreement with the Spanish for self-rule of the Maroon settlement. For much of the 500 years, ever since the first Spanish ship transported the first boatload of Africans direct from Guinea coast to Haiti in 1518, the outrageous validity of these African slavery became the central institution of European empires in the Americas, with 5 prominent languages spoken in the Caribbean, namely English, French, Creole, Spanish, and Dutch. Duty Boukman was an African slave and a leader of the Haitian Revolution. He organized a meeting of the slaves in Haiti to fight against white ruling, the French. Boukman was a leader of the Maroons and Voodoo Ougan. Unfortunately, he died prior the independence of Haiti in 1804. Revolts, attitudes towards the slave trade, battles, the Industrial Revolution, and the economic development led to successive emancipation days in the Caribbean. Many British colonies received emancipation on August 1st, 1834, such as Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, Guyana, and with some on August 2nd, 3rd, July 29th or the 30th, as well the French colonies recognized Abolition Day and Emancipation in May, June 1848, and for the Dutch colonies in July 1863. In 1791, the slave rebellion in Haiti, then Santo Domingo, led by Toussaint Louverture, a well-educated former slave, led the Haitian slave into battle. In 1804, the French proclaimed the independence of a new nation, Haiti, being the second oldest republic in the Americas. During this time, a substantial amount of French-speaking arrivals from Haiti were displaced by a massive slave revolt and Haitian Revolution, which was successful against French colonial rule on the island, now the sovereign state of Haiti. In recent years, there have been an influx of Haitians to the Maryland area. In fact, a census report from September 2012 revealed that immigrants from Haiti are the 37th largest foreign-born population in Baltimore, Maryland. Haitians have lived in Maryland for many generations, especially in the Baltimore area, and their influence have helped shape the community. In 1828, Haitian women refugees founded the Oblate Sisters of Providence, a Catholic religious institute for African American women in Baltimore. In 1864, along the Sulpician Fathers, Haitian refugees founded St. Francis Xavier Church. The church is the oldest historic black Catholic church in the United States. It is with great pride that I share the historic Haitian impact in Maryland that led to the inception of Comité Haïti Incorporated, also known as CHI, started in 2016. CHI is a grassroots of organization geared towards connecting communities to educational, social, cultural resources within the state of Maryland. KAI, also CHI, offers participation in Haitian Flag Day, Haitian Independence Day, which reach into the pumpkin soup celebration, heritage and cultural events, drumming, Creole languages classes. These events serve as a connector and bridge builder within the greater community. In 2019, Maryland became the first state to proclaim the months of August Caribbean Heritage Month. This proceeds by Maryland Governor Commission of the Caribbean Affairs created in 2012, DC being the first to proclaim the month of June in 2003. Installed the Mayor Advisory Commission of the Caribbean Community Affairs, and recently DC Council members introduced an Office of the Caribbean Affairs Established Act of 2019. Prince George's County has established a multicultural commission, which includes a Commission of Caribbean Affairs, and the U.S. in 2006 proclaimed June as the National Caribbean American Heritage Month. Merci. Merci.
More than 350 years. That's how long the transatlantic slave trade operated. Millions of people were taken from the continent of Africa and dispersed literally all over the world. 90% of the Africans removed from the continent were brought to the Caribbean islands in South America. One country in particular imported more Africans than any other. That was Brazil. The colonial nation behind the slave trade between the continent of Africa and Brazil was Portugal. As a matter of fact, Portugal was the first nation to actually participate in the transatlantic slave trade. It stated that more than 40% of Africans brought from Africa to the New World were taken to Brazil. Another way of looking at that fact is, between the years 1500 and about 1860, more than 5 million Africans were brought to Brazil. Now, there are many, many reasons as to why Brazil, But there was one major cash crop, and that was sugar. In those days, before Industrial Revolution, sugar production was extremely labor intensive, meaning that a large number of people was necessary to produce a small amount of sugar. And it became advantageous to the Portuguese to work the Africans to death rather than to watch them grow old. After all, you had an endless supply to choose from the continent of Africa. Now, contrary to popular belief, very, very few Africans were brought from the continent to North America, and specifically the United States. Less than 5%, as a matter of fact. So Brazil, the sugar production and the trade of sugar became very important in relation to the triangular trade. Brazil was the number one country in the production of sugar 200 years ago, and Brazil is still the number one producer of sugar today. Another vestige of Portuguese colonialism is that on the continent of Africa, there are several countries who have as their national language, Portuguese. Those countries are Angola, Mozambique, Guinea-Bissau, Cape Verde Islands, and Sao Tome and Principe. Another vestige of Brazilian slavery is that more than half of the population of Brazil can trace their ancestors to the continent of Africa. One of the major import cities in Brazil where slaves were brought from the continent was Bahia. And to this day, Bahia is the epicenter of the Afro-Brazilian culture. If you're interested in learning more about the transatlantic slave trade in Brazil, contact the Sandy Spring Slave Museum. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was our very valued volunteer, Ray Smith, sharing some information about Brazil. And just remember, Brazil was the last country to abolish slavery in 1888. Before that, we had Gary Amy, who is the president of KAI, or Comite Ayete Incorporated, out of Baltimore. And we appreciate that he was able to share some more information about the Afro, Latino, and Caribbean information about slavery and emancipation. We will now move into a donation appeal from our young docent, Aaliyah.
Hi, my name is Aaliyah, and I'm a 6th grade student at William H. Farquhar Middle School. I have just recently started becoming a volunteer at the Sandy Spring Slave Museum. And the Sandy Spring Slave Museum is a nonprofit organization, meaning it survives solely on donations, volunteer work, and grants. The time I have spent in this museum has been wonderful and absolutely eye-opening. And this museum has taught me so much about history and about normal things in life that you don't really get to appreciate until you realize that you might not have had it until now. And it has shown me so much about me being myself and has helped me build so much for my character and the type of person I am today. But I'll only be focusing on one thing that this museum has been teaching me for the several months I've been here. And this is leadership. All of the history that is in this museum focuses on almost one thing solely. And that is African Americans who are so accomplished and so dedicated to what they did. And I will give you a few examples. One example is Bessie Coleman. She was the first African-American woman to get her pilot's license, and Barack Obama was the first African-American U.S. president. These two people have two things in common. They were African-Americans and they were accomplished. They didn't give up when people might have told them, no, you can't do this, or you don't have the qualifications to even get close to this. They kept at it. I have gained so much information in the 3 months I have been here. That is why I'm asking kindly for your donation to the African American Slave Museum, because one person can make all the difference.
So, welcome back. And again, if you enjoyed your experience and the learning that we provided for you this evening, feel free to generously donate to the Sandy Springs Slave Museum and Art Museum. So we're going to take a moment to hear from Chris Rabb. He's from the 200th Congressional Representative in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And he's the local homeboy. And he's going to tell us why it's important to celebrate Emancipation Day.
What does emancipation mean to me? Emancipation brings to mind the first bold strike against racial injustice, against Black folk. Emancipation represented institutional freedom from shackles, from slavery, but not from racial oppression. It was the first major step among many towards true racial justice. In Maryland, my ancestors, enslaved and free people of color, were in a state that was a border state where enslavers could still hold people as property and remain on the Union side as long as they gave soldiers to that cause. We were in limbo, and many of our ancestors fought to keep our nation together, even though it didn't really fight for us. And here in Pennsylvania, where I'm a state legislator, the state legislature abolished slavery in 1780, but it didn't really. It was gradual abolition. We had the poll tax in Pennsylvania up until 1933. Redlining was invented here in Philadelphia. So emancipation is an important thing to remember and to appreciate as a first step. We have so much further to go, but we have to understand our history. We have to share our history. We have to teach the next generation how our history connects to the present and how they can touch our future for our collective benefit.
And so now I'm going to toss it over to Natalie.
Thank you, Troy. And we are so appreciative of Chris Rabb for sharing his thoughts on why we should celebrate Emancipation Day. Now, we would like to share with you just some information about the museum. We value and consider ourselves a teaching museum, and we tell a comprehensive story. And so we offer many programs for educators and for people who are from different groups. So community groups, youth groups, religious groups, what have you. We really value the teaching aspect. So we have different programs offered for educators and other folks. But we have focused with our educators and had partnerships with Montgomery County Public Schools in the previous school year to help expand the curriculum instruction and to make have the instruction be more culturally responsive. So we have some things as you see listed here for any educators viewing tonight. You can do some some planning, some PLC planning. We can also offer teaching lessons here from the museum and focusing on a particular area or artifact, and along with having live virtual tours with the museum staff. And you can also request a DVD recorded tour if you would like. In addition to that, we will they had our first year in the summer having an educator institute, which was for anyone who's an educator throughout not just Maryland, but anywhere within the state and other areas of the Maryland, where we provided some courses for the educators, and it was really very successful. And we're going to continue that again. So look on our home webpage to look out for the Educator Institute coming back, and you can receive credits, CEUs for these if you join that Educator Institute. And we also have genealogy services for anyone who would start learning about trying to research their families. So those are a few things that we offer here at the Sandy Springs Slave Museum, and just check out our website for more information on how to contact us. So I'm going to now send this back to Troy for our next section.
So again, we love to have you become a part of the magic of the Sandy Springs Slave Museum and African Art Gallery. So you can become a member and we have a couple of different levels of memberships. We have $25 for the Hilltop membership, $50 for the Odd Fellows, Meeting House is $75, Howard Chapel is $150, and Cincinnati is $500. And with each level of membership offers you different opportunities to engage, interact in the museum in many different ways. And so consider becoming a member of the Sandy Springs Slave Museum. If you'd like to pursue a membership, don't hesitate to visit the Sandy Springs Slave Museum website. Now, finally, there's so many hard working people here at the museum. It's been a wonderful growth opportunity for me, and I'm sure I speak for the rest of my colleagues when I say that. And so we do everything from cleaning up to making sure that the images and statues and the many artifacts that we have are in tip-top condition for our guests. And along with that comes the reward of preserving our history and educating others on the rich history of Sandy Spring and of Africans and African Americans and Afro-Latinos and Afro-Caribbeans. But other than the thanks we give each other and the praise and admiration we give to one another, every now and then we get awarded for our efforts. So most recently, our founder, Dr. Anderson, received the Roscoe Nix Community Leadership Award. And so we're very proud and honored for him to receive that for the hard work that he's put into the museum and the community. But he's not the only one that's going to be recognized this evening. So let's sit back and see which one of our board members will be recognized this evening.
Hello everyone, this is Liz Fields, and normally during March every year, National Women's History Month, we host across the state of Maryland the Harriet Ross Tubman Day of Remembrance in the state of Maryland. Each year since the year 2000, when we went to the Maryland General Assembly and asked State Senator Clarence Mitchell IV to introduce a bill that would honor Harriet Tubman by proclaiming and designating annually March 10th as Harriet Ross Tubman Day of Remembrance for the state of Maryland. Of course, not knowing her birthday, these dates for her tributes are always held on March 10th, which of course falls in National Women's History Month. And so each year we ask the governor to issue the official governor's proclamation, which he does. That's this proclamation right here. And normally we would be at the Maryland General Assembly, the Senate House, or even the House of Delegates. One year we were in the governor's reception room. And we always ask a student from the Navy Academy, a midship lady, if you will, to read the proclamation and where the governor lists all the different reasons why we're honoring Harriet Tubman. So we started in the year 2000, and a part of the program would be a lecture, a tour, a planting of a tree, having a lecture, talk, discussion. And we've done this in Kent County, Prince George's County, just about every county in the state of Maryland. And one of the significant events that we do during March, on March 10th, is a presentation of the annual Harriet Ross Tubman Lifetime Achievement Award. And we started that in year 2000, and we gave the first award to Dr. Joanne Martin. The second year, we followed that up with giving the award to Dr. Thelma Daly. And over the years, the annual Harriet Tubman Day tribute in Maryland, we would award a woman of color primarily, mostly. I think Senator Barbara McCuskey in year 2012 became the first non-African-American woman to receive the award. Former head of the Harriet Tubman Discovery Center Underground Railroad Park in Cambridge, Maryland, was a lady named Barbara Taggart from the National Park Service. She's the only non-Marylander we ever gave the award to. But throughout the years, we've given the award to such prestigious women as Verna J. Jones, Dr. Kay McElvery, Delegates Ruth Kirk, the late Ruth Kirk, also Delegate Hattie Harrison, and even Speaker Pro Tem Adrian Jones has been a recipient of the Harriet Tubman Day Award. And this year, because of the virus, COVID-19, March activities were canceled, and we did not have an opportunity to host the Harriet Tubman Day program, but we did get the governor to issue the official Harriet Tubman Day proclamation, and also we were able to ask the governor to issue the proclamation honoring from Montgomery County, the Sandy Spring Slave Museum, Ms. Deborah Buchanan. So she is our 2020 Harriet Ross Tubman Lifetime Achievement Award. And quickly, because I know we don't have a lot of time, but I want to quickly say, this is from the state of Maryland, governor of the state of Maryland, to Ms. Deborah Buchanan. Greetings. Be it known that on behalf of the citizens of our state, in recognition of a well-deserved tribute to honor and celebrate your selection as a recipient of the 2020 Harriet Ross Tubman Lifetime Achievement Award, we have grateful appreciation for your leadership, commitment, and service. And as the people of Maryland join in expressing our sincerest best wishes and congratulations, we are pleased to confer upon you this governor's citation signed by our Governor Larry Hogan Jr. and Lieutenant Governor Boyd Rutherford. And this is the proclamation that we presented to Ms. Buchanan. And hopefully they'll find a vaccine and a cure, and we'll get this virus out of here, and we'll be able to come to the Sandy Spring Slave Museum and congratulate her in proper tribute, thanking her for all her lifetime of work. As in the case of Harriet Tubman, Mrs. Deborah Buchanan has been another humanitarian, giving and caring and just serving and volunteering and helping wherever she can, particularly in the world of education, because she is an educator. So on behalf of all the citizens of Maryland, on behalf of the governor, to Mrs. Buchanan, and all your friends and associates at the Sandy Spring Slave Museum, we congratulate you and we thank you. We appreciate your service. This has been Lou Fields, founder of Harriet Ross Tubman Day in Maryland. If you want more information about it, you can just go on our website at bdx443.com. Of course, you can just Google Harriet Tubman Day in Maryland. And one quick note, thanks to a Harriet Tubman descendant, Ms. Ernestine Tina Wyatt, who lived in Washington, D.C. in 2017, not only did we open up the $21 million Harriet Tubman Museum in Cambridge, Maryland, but she and I, Ms. Wyatt and I, were able to go to Washington, D.C. and officially had the Washington, D.C. Council pass legislation proclaiming Harriet Tubman Day in Washington, D.C. So New York, Georgia, all over the place. On March 10th, we honor the great Harriet Tubman. And so doing this year, we are presenting this award to Ms. Deborah Buchanan. This is Lou Fields. We thank you. We appreciate you. And congratulations, Ms. Buchanan. Well deserved.
So, Deborah,
I'm shocked. I'm just shocked.
we are so proud of you.
Thank
Congratulations
you.
on the Harriet Tubman
Thank you.
Award.
They pulled this one off for me because I'm got my nose into everything around here, and I'm surprised they got this past me, but they did, and I thank them. And it's I appreciate it, but I have to say that what I do is a labor of love, so it doesn't feel like it's work. It's just a labor of love. Thank you very much.
Way to go, Debbie, a deserving person. So we've come to the end of our program. And we appreciate you spending time, taking time out of your busy schedules. We know many of you have been Zooming all day, so it means a lot for us, for you to have tuned in to us. So on Natalie and I, on the behalf of Dr. Anderson, our founder, and the board members of the Sandy Springs Slave Museum and African Art Museum Gallery, would like to thank you for joining us in our celebration of Emancipation Day in Maryland. But we must remember that freedom comes at a cost, and we cannot take our freedom for granted. We have to work for it every day, as there are those who are working very hard to take our freedoms away. So please celebrate our Emancipation Day by getting out and voting on our liberation. It depends on it. Thank you again. And remember, go vote. Have a wonderful evening.